Hello, YouTube, known as the Geo Scholar. This week, the United States of America has agreed to suspend military drills in the Republic of Korea, also known as South Korea. And this actually comes as an agreement between the United States of America and North Korea, or rather, the presidents of those two countries, President Trump of the United States of America and President Kim Jong Un of North Korea. Now, why this is important? There's something that must be understood. There has long been a strong military presence in South Korea on the part of the United States of America, and there have been military drills that have been taking place in South Korea. And like South Korea is. Sorry about that, the stream went crazy again. But South Korea, North Korea, as was mentioned in an earlier stream, North Korea and South Korea have been, they've been in a deadlock. There is a war between both countries. The war never really ended. It was a ceasefire, as in, people ceased firing guns and bombs, but at for the last 65 years, it's just been a Cold War. It's been a peninsula divided. And with the peninsula being divided, the two nations have gone their separate ways and have taken very divergent fortunes. South Korea has become very prosperous. It has become one of the strongest economies in the world, democratic country. It receives millions of visitors every year. People want to visit this country every year. It has, miracle on the Han River flowing through the capital of South Korea, Seoul. Imagine in 35 years, you go from being one of the poorest countries in the world to hosting the 1988 Summer Olympics. Imagine that. North Korea, on the other hand, is now one of the orphan states of communism. It took the communist route, stayed communist, and kept up with a very anti American regime, and it stayed that way pretty much up to now. And North Korea is now one of the poorest countries in the world. It has gone through famine, and currently there are issues with food security now in South Korea. Both countries, no, North Korea, not South Korea. South Korea, there's plenty of food. North Korea, there are problems. North Korea has problems. South Korea is doing well. But this week, in in light of President Trump and the United States of America agreeing to suspend military drills in South Korea, it makes you wonder why the military presence in South Korea in the first place. Well, I am gonna go back to how the Korean War started. You have to understand Korea's location. There is the Korean Peninsula. Obviously, capital Pyongyang, capital there Seoul. Now, the capital. Now, Korea, given its location, it's in a very something about the location here. You got China right here across the sea. China's over here. Part of North Korea actually borders Russia, a very small part of it. Right here. But when you really think about all that's been going on with the peninsula, I mentioned in an earlier video, the Korean peninsula used to be ruled by Japan for 35 years. And then towards the end of World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union both declared war on Japan. And what ended up taking place, North Korea and South Korea, the reason they took such divergent paths, North Korea was freed from the rule of Imperial Japan through the Soviet forces, which came out through here. United States forces helped free the Korean peninsula from the south. And, well, all forces met here. It happened again. My live stream keeps screwing up. But, as I was saying, the forces met while in the US and Soviet Union were, how would I put it, they were nominally allies. After the end of World War II, communism became the big threat. Communism became the threat, and there was the threat of North Korea becoming communist. North Korea would go into communist rule, and North Korea wanted to take South Korea, and that sparked the Korean War. And to be perfectly honest, there's really no winner in that war, because really the North has remained communist while the South has diverged and has become a more democratic nation with a free market economy. But there's more geopolitically. One thing to consider about South Korea and North Korea and their location. I think about where North Korea is. North Korea shares its border with Russia and China and South Korea. This demilitarized zone right here, it's a really ironic name considering it's very militarized to the T. But one of the things about the location of North Korea, Soviet Union is no more. It is now, communism has ended for the most part throughout the world. There are very few communist states left. And because of that, China it's communist, but it also has a free market, but there's also a free market economy there. Russia no longer deals in communism. Japan does not have communism. South Korea does not have communism. Basically, North Korea has turned its back on most of the world and has viewed the United States as hostile. Japan is an ally of the United States. South Korea, here's how it goes. Japan is an ally of the United States of America. South Korea is an ally of the United States of America. China will do business with America. China and the United States have decent relations. Russia and the United States, basically, the United States of America, relations between the US and a lot of areas in East Asia are pretty good, except for North Korea. North Korea is the one country that has a very malignant hatred of the United States of America. The one. There's not nearly as much there's not nearly as much disgust compared to other countries in East Asia or Northern Asia. And so when you really think about that, when you really think about just, let's think about, I'm going to get off the map. When you think about the location of North Korea, and I just showed you, you see that North Korea is located in a region where, for the most part, its neighbors will do business with the US. Its neighbors will have diplomatic relations with the United States. And with South Korea, with the US military having a decent presence over there, North Korea doesn't like it. And one thing to consider, so much of just how the Kim regime in North Korea has been propped up, comes from a lot of hatred towards the US. And it's a well known fact that a lot of that just hatred for the United States is being used to cover up for the fact that North Korea's got a lot of problems. It's easy to go and blame another country for one's problems, and it's even easier to blame that country when countries that border, I mean, let me sort. It's easy to blame that country for it's easy to blame said country. Now I'm gonna put it in terms of relations between U.S. and North Korea, U.S. and South Korea. It is easy for North Korea to blame the U.S. for all of its problems, especially when it's located in a region where pretty much nearly all of North Korea's neighbors have some kind of diplomatic and economic relationship with the United States. And North Korea has always viewed the United States as a threat, because North Korea being communist, the United States fighting against communism, not wanting that communism to spread, and the United States is viewed as inherently a threat to North Korea. Whereas, the country south of there, South Korea, has decent relations, good relations with the United States. You have a military presence there as well. Japan has decent relations with the United States. China, you have, diplomacy and trade. Same with Russia. You have that sort of, not necessarily buddy-buddy, but, it's not, you don't have that hostility that North Korea has for the United States. Not nearly. You have to really think about North Korea and some of the problems that it's having, and just how dictatorial the regime in North Korea is. Excuse me, I'm gonna check something. But yeah, you have to really think about it. Dictatorial regimes will seek to blame other countries for their problems. And in the case of North Korea, it has always blamed the United States, because the United States is very anti-communist. And when you are surrounded by, and when you share a border with another country that's very anti-communist, in this case South Korea, and when you have Japan, which is also a democratic country with a free market economy, and it does not do communism at all. North Korea has sort of viewed those countries, North Korea, there is a very, now obviously, given the relationship between Japan and Korea in years past, there are a lot of tensions. There have been some tensions, but with, what's up? Thank you for listening. Now with North Korea has a very large hatred for Japan. And it goes back to when Imperial Japan ruled over the Korean Peninsula. South Korea and Japan over the years have managed to work things out. But North Korea basically has adopted the philosophy of just turning its back on most of the world. And right now, even China is starting to be very critical of the Kim regime because China has given North Korea some aid in the past, but now even China is being very critical. And how this relates to the suspension of military drills in South Korea, well, you have to understand all of this. There are some things, people are wondering, what does Kim Jong un want? What does the Kim regime want? Do they want survival of the regime? Do they want reunification with South Korea? What do they want? And let's look at the scenarios here. If the goal is survival of the regime, well, this is the thing. Kim Jong un fears losing power because obviously there are problems. And Kim Jong un obviously feels that the United States is a threat to the regime. Because let's be honest, that's a dictatorship and it's nothing you'd ever want to live under. But he wants to survive, and the survival of the regime, that idea being, Kim Jong un feels that the US military presence down in South Korea is a threat to his regime. And it's like, well, why the military presence in South Korea in the first place? Well, one thing to consider, South Korea wants to stay South Korea. South Korea wants to stay democratic, wants to stay a free market economy. It does not want to become North Korea. And it's doing very well right now as a country. So that's probably one big reason why, there's probably one thing to consider about having the military drills there. As sort of a way of keeping North Korea at bay. But then another thing, but if somebody were to consider, well, maybe the Korean Peninsula, maybe there should be a reunification. If there is any reunification of the Korean Peninsula, the Pyongyang government is going to have to go. Kim Jong un is going to have to accept giving up the regime, because right now, if there was a reunification of North and South Korea right now, it would come like, if the reunification were to come on Kim Jong un's terms, it would come at South Korea's expense, because South Korea is doing very well without North Korea. It's doing much better, and there's really no incentive economically and government-wise to reunify and join the Pyongyang government. There's really no incentive right now to do that. So it's like, if the goal is to have a reunification if the goal is a reunification of the peninsula, the only way that could properly happen is if there is a collapse in the regime. Or, if Kim Jong un accepts that the regime has to end in order to have the Korean Peninsula reunite. And it was the same thing that happened when you look at Germany. Germany had its reunification toward 1989, 1990. It had its reunification. The communist government had to fall. Now the capital has remained Berlin. The capital of East Germany would become just the capital of Germany, Berlin. But the communist government that was in Berlin had to go. It could no longer continue the way it did before. it had to become just Germany. The capital could be Berlin, but the communist government had to go away. The government that was once in Bonn, Germany. Oh, by the way, I'm going to show you where Bonn, Germany is. That's where the capital of West Germany used to be. Not too far from Cologne, Germany. But if there is, it leads to think about this. What is the goal of Kim Jong Un? How is the suspension of military drills going to affect the process of ending the Korean War? How is it going to, what's going to happen? Is there going to be some kind of reunification in the future? Is there going to be, or will North Korea, or will the Kim Jong Un regime collapse? What's going to happen? Because a lot of questions, and no one knows what's going to happen right now. That's all I have to say about that. Be sure to check out other videos on my channel. Be sure to leave a comment, like, and subscribe.